Nebraska farmers made little progress on harvest over the last week. The latest report from the state's National Agricultural Statistics Service shows producers advanced 1 point in corn and 4 points in soybeans. That leaves growers 16 points behind their 5-year average pace in corn and 23 points slower in beans. To discuss weed management options after harvest is complete, we talked this week with Nebraska Extension's Proctor and asked how the delay, along with above-average precipitation, might be a challenge for fall weed control.
Yeah, so I suppose in some ways it's to be determined, but I mean, you have all this moisture, so it's frustrating. You can't get in the field and do anything, so you want to harvest and you can't. And then if you're even thinking about fall weed control, you still got harvest standing between you and that, and so I think it's a challenge in patience, if nothing else, but then thinking about additional rain is only going to help weeds germinate.
If we think about one of the bigger weeds to control this fall, that's marestail. What is the timing window? So how much time might we have after we clear the field?
Yeah, so we have a little bit of work from last year that we did, and for eastern Nebraska, I'd say from North Platte east, from the data we have, 90–95% of that marestail that we were working with came up in the fall. But then when we went all the way out to Scotts Bluff and we're looking at some of the same marestail out there, that was entirely spring emerged. And so it's controlled very much by the environment.
We talked about this summer, but describe your research on trying to control marestail in the spring versus the fall.
Yeah, so we did find that when we applied herbicides in the fall, when the weeds were small, so it goes back to some of these basic weed control principles of the smaller the weed is when you try to control it, the more effective it is. And so I think that's a lot of what's going on. But fall applied herbicides for marestail were more effective than spring applied.
What role does corn residue play?
Yeah, that was a question we were wondering, and so we thought if we spray our fall herbicides over top of corn residue right after harvest when it's really heavy, what effect does that have on marestail control? And we did find that herbicides that are less water soluble, so something like Sharpen, that's not very water soluble, it tends to bind to that residue, and then when it rains it just doesn't wash off, compared to something like dicamba that has real high water solubility. Once we got some rain, it washed off and we still got really good control under the residue.
What other weeds are out there that we're concerned about right now?
So there's, I think henbit would be another fall emerger. It doesn't seem to be as challenging to manage as marestail, and field pennycress is another fall emerger that could cause some concern. But I think because of resistance, that's why marestail kind of makes the top of the list. Is it once it gets into that next year, if you don't get it managed, it's a tough one to control.
Any specific ideas about rotating your chemicals that you're using for specific weeds?
Yeah, so when you talk about resistant management, I think using different herbicides is important. And some of the research has shown that tank mixing is better than rotating over time. So if you use one herbicide one year and then switch to another one the next year, that's not as effective as having multiple modes of action in the tank at the same time.